Here we are in New York City, and it's been interesting times in the USA of late. 35 days long shutdown has caused all sorts of moments to occur in industries around this nation. Fortunately, we have here today Jordan Levine, Chief Economist with the California Association of Realtors. He's going to give us a little bit of a rundown on some of the fallout from the recent political moves. Jordan, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it very much. Now look, we've been talking about an occurrence unseen in history. 35 days, 800,000 workers out. Reports of late, $11 billion out of the economy. They're saying $3 billion permanently.
Right.
What are some of the big picture implications for this sort of occurrence for the US, and particularly in the property and real estate industry?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think there's the immediate kind of economic hit, right? You've got 800,000 folks who weren't getting paid. That's money that they weren't out pumping into the economy to boost things like economic growth through their consumption and all of that good stuff. But I think that, that one's going to be more short-lived. The thing that I worry about more is kind of the impact to consumer confidence in the property business in particular. We are very much impacted by consumer confidence, perhaps even more than many other industries. It's a big ticket purchase, in many cases the biggest purchase a consumer is going to make in their entire life. And so while those folks will eventually get some of their back pay, at least the non-contractors will, I think that the bigger concern is how does this play out going forward? It doesn't look like this is the end of any challenges on the political front, and I worry that might actually undermine the confidence of folks getting out there and wanting to spend and not getting into a kind of holding pattern of wait and see what happens. And that's the bigger thing, because we really need folks feeling good, especially this late in the cycle. We're 10 years into this expansion, and we really can't afford to be rocking folks in terms of their optimism.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make, because when you think about there was a report out, the National Rental Home Council, I'll get that right.
Yeah.
We're doing things like forgiving the big groups that look after single-family residences, of course.
Sure.
And they were doing things like forgiving rent payments for these people and also waiving some of the late fees, etc. I mean, it shows a real generosity of spirit amongst the industry to try and keep things moving along. But you are talking about confidence there. Do you see the industry itself trying to make some moves to really boost morale in what was a pretty tough period? Are there things they're doing practically?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, one of the kind of upshots or silver linings to this, if there is one, is that kind of erosion of confidence has led rates to go lower. And for the buyers out there, that's a real reprieve. We were up at 5% for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Now we're down in the 4.5% range. And so, to the extent that there's a good news aspect of the shutdown, I think that's it. And you've really seen realtors and agents out there trying to refocus the conversation towards some of these positives, the benefits of home ownership over the long run, the fact that you can actually jump in and save about 50 basis points right now. And so there are ways that those folks on the ground are trying to kind of make it happen, but it's in the face of those headwinds, which I think, you can't understate.
Yeah, sure. And look, I realize that we're talking maybe in the nuances of realtors here, but I was thinking, your average escrow on a property, what's that running at sort of 29, 30 days?
30 days.
I mean, we're in a 35-day shutdown. Does that have really nuanced little on-the-ground problems for agents where they're finding people just can't complete?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the mortgage market in particular, a lot of these loans are through the government, right?
Yeah.
So you've got, folks like the FHA, FHFA underwriting a lot of these loans. Those are government agencies, and they've been cut back, and so you see that affecting all kinds of different things throughout the loan process, the escrow process, and that has delayed things a bit. Again, that's kind of a short-run impact that I think will bubble out, but I think the question of whether folks want to even jump into a market like that in the first place is kind of the bigger challenge for us right now.
Of course. Construction industry, it's got to be massive over here, and that's yet another sector that has got to have been hard hit by that. Have we seen some of the numbers, some of the metrics in construction reflect what's happened over the last 35 days?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's hard to tell because one of the main aspects of the shutdown, which isn't property related, but they're just not putting out a lot of government statistics. So as an economist, I'm a huge consumer of information, vast majority of which is put out by the U.S. government through agencies like the Commerce Bureau, Census Bureau, things like that. And so we're unfortunately not getting a good read on what's actually happening with things like consumer spending and construction. And so, in California, where I'm from, we have a huge deficit in construction to begin with, and this only kind of compounds that already difficult situation.
Yeah, of course. As an economist too, I suppose, California is a big economy, one of the largest in the world. Yet, what happens in the US has ramifications throughout the globe. Are you predicting any sort of fallout, maybe even beyond the borders that you're used to dealing in?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're a big safe haven for foreign capital. I think that's one of the reasons why our property market has done so well this cycle, is because, to the extent that you have concerns about your own domestic economy in places like China, South America, Australia, the U.S. makes investment dollars seem like a more safe bet, even if the return in the United States itself isn't great. If you're worried about your own exchange rate depreciating, or just worried about bigger economic problems at home, it makes sense to kind of park your money in the United States. And I think this kind of, again, undermines that confidence that we are a good long-term bet, especially when we toy with notions like defaulting on our debt and things like that. It just makes it less appealing to those folks who would have otherwise put their money in here as a safe haven.
Of course. There's some really favourite metrics back in Australia. We like to watch median price, vacancy rates, those sorts of things. I mean, have you got some numbers that people should be watching to see how these things are going to play out over the coming months or year?
Definitely. I mean, we're definitely seeing a shift in the marketplace. If you go back 12 months ago, prices were really growing in median about 8 to 10%. So really rapid price growth, lots of equity being generated. And over the last 6 months, we've really seen the market start to shift. This was before the shutdown happened, so I don't think it's all shutdown related, but also just because we're so late in the cycle that we've seen price growth slow. So we're in that low single digits now, which is a lot slower. It's not prices falling. I don't think there's anything to panic about, but I do think that we're starting to see some buyer fatigue where folks are, unfortunately being priced out of the market. Unfortunately, folks' incomes aren't growing at 8 to 10% a year, and so they continue to fall behind the curve from an affordability standpoint. And so we're seeing competition taper off a bit. Homes are staying on the market a little bit longer. We're finally seeing sellers do some discounting, which is something that we haven't seen in a long time. But I think the good news is that for buyers, you can get in there and start to negotiate again, right? Rates have come back down. Sellers are willing to deal again, and you have more options out there to choose from. And so even though we're kind of at a bit of a shift point, I still think there's a lot of reasons for buyers and sellers to be in that market.
It wasn't so long ago that California was one of those markets you just couldn't get into, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
So here we are in a position maybe that there's a silver lining for some of those in the
There's
market.
some light at the end of the tunnel, I think, for those buyers who've been waiting around and haven't had any homes to be able to buy, and we're getting out-competed by investors and things like that. I think that they have a real chance to actually get their foot on that property ladder.
Terrific. Look, maybe just finally too, I mean, you've been through this sort of tumultuous time.
Sure.
It could happen again. The noises are that there's every chance it will shut down again. Are there moves that the industry make now? Is there lessons learned from the last 35 days that they can now apply some things, if it happens again, as a bit of a contingency to see them safely through it?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the number one thing we can do is focus on those consumers. At the end of the day, we can't control what the government's going to do, and there's a lot of turmoil and friction there, no doubt about it. But I think we need to focus on kind of selling the long-term view. Property values go up. It's one of the only ways that typical Americans generate wealth in this society, and that's tried and true, been proven a million times over. So we need to focus on that long term, focus on the short term benefits that those buyers have, which I mentioned, lower competition, more options to choose from, and the fact that they can still get in while rates are near historic lows. I always joke that my dad would always brag about his 12.5% mortgage interest rate back in the 80s, and I think that those add up to real dollars in carrying costs. And so having that opportunity to get in while rates are back down at 4.5%, as long as you're planning on staying there a while, makes a lot of sense. And so I think focus the consumers on that long term, and we'll do all right.
Fascinating. Thank you so much, Jordan. We really appreciate your time.